Hi, welcome to Books in Action. My name's Melissa Kopecki. I have the good fortune of being several things. One is the director of the South Orange Public Library, and another is a sometime host for this TV show, which is delightful because I get to meet really interesting people like our guest tonight, Leslie Savan, who's here as an author and a South Orange resident and a fun person to talk to, especially about words. And I have to say, welcome, but I just wanted to say I've been sitting here noticing that we both have copies of your book, and we both have like a little piece of paper shoved in all over the place, and I think that's the mark of something. Maybe a reader, maybe it's something not quite so nice. So welcome, and let me hold up this book, and you can tell us, just, give us, this is your most recent.
Yes, it is. Slam Dunks and No-Brainers, and it is about, as the subtitle says, language, although I like to call it pop language. Pop language in your life, the media, business, politics, and whatever.
Were you, when I picked up the book to read, I was just intimidated by the breadth of the topic. At what point did you say to yourself, why am I doing this? Because you cover history, you cover, just all kinds of things.
Well, I'm not, and I don't know much history. That's not my expertise at all. And I'm not a linguist. I'm a journalist. But my focus was, what allowed me to cover a broad area was by connecting it to the central spine of the book, and the idea is about pop language. Why is it powerful? What is it? Why is it powerful? Why am I bothering to write a book about it, basically? And to answer my own question.
Thank you. Good. This is good. I can just listen. I like this.
Because I noticed that most people, myself included, were talking with certain phrases and that we repeated over and over. And as a writer, and I was writing a column about advertising at the Village Voice at the time, I would use these phrases in my writing, especially when I felt, oh God, how am I going to get end that sentence? How am I going to make the reader want to continue on? So I put something kind of pop in, or make the sentence end that way, or the paragraph end with a little up note, a little word play, something sort of savvy or ironic sounding. And then I started to notice, because I was writing a column about advertising. This was the column I did for 13 years for the Village Voice. And I simply was using advertising as a lens to really write about society and politics. Like people use movie reviews to write about that. I was using ads as my review and launching pad. And so I started noticing many of the same words being used in ads over and over again. Most glaringly, stuff, the word stuff, especially in the late 90s. It was in dozens, maybe 24 ads for completely different products, unrelated to each other. And, we know Snapple, the best stuff on earth. Microsoft was bringing out its new Windows, and it said, this stuff will make you free, or this stuff will do this and that. And why were they repeating the word stuff? What was up with that? And then I ended up writing a column or two about just the words used in advertising. Why are they using it? And I sort of began to see the pattern. The pattern was that these words or phrases were used as a punchline. They were supposed to be innately funny or energetic themselves. They were used as a punchline, or they were used as, I think we use them today in everyday conversation, as sort of a laugh track or applause sign. They are words that come with their own built-in applause sign. And now I should say some of those words, right? So people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, give us a couple examples. Whatever.
Well, whatever is a big one. Duh. I don't think so. As if, well, this isn't that, it's not as current as if anymore. Then there's more businessy terms like think outside the box, or win-win, or bottom line. And or there's other phrases like, oh, you're good. which really means you're bad, but you're so bad in a way that I admire that you're good. Step up to the plate, go-to guys, good to go. I mean, there's don't even think about it. What part of no don't you understand? It goes on, and I can't remember them all the time. But
well,
that's
right, and it's amazing. As I was going through this, I was thinking how often you hear those things, and that is one of your points. Well, not even a point, but something you analyze is how they've become so much more incredibly pervasive, that pop language, or the idea of a slang, or making a connection with people by using certain phrases or having that instant punchline thing, is certainly nothing new. But the pervasiveness and the quickness of the spread is something that's directly related to media and advertising. It's really interesting, and the number of phrases and how often you hear them in a day. I mean, I remember my mother trying to break me of saying the word like, and she would do it by counting. Every time I said it, she'd count it, and it really did. And here I'm saying, and you could do the same thing for that, and you start listening to it. There are a lot of the phrases that are in here that you just don't listen to. I mean, how often does somebody say whatever in the course of a day? And it's not just kids, it's
not just
everybody
kids, right,
from all phases of life. Another one that you didn't just say, that I want to lead into something else I wanted to ask you about, was the phrase they're toast, or it's toast, or their history, or whatever. Because besides talking about the automatic punchline, something that actually had me stop reading and just thinking for a while was you were using examples of real people in real positions of power, using the expression it's toast to convince people that they were serious. Well, you were talking about Saddam Hussein, and that they were saying that seriously they were taking him out of power, and that he's toast was the phrase that did it, not saying we're going to take him out of power, or here's our military plan, or this is the decision, or anything. It was the actual phrase, he's toast.
Right, and this was Dick Cheney saying it. There were two incidents in Bob Woodward's previous book, Plan of Attack, that I took and I thought demonstrated the most powerful example of pop language, or demonstrated rather why it's so powerful, this thing that we think is just fun and entertaining. The first example is the one you're talking about. Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia had come to the United States. This was before the Iraqi war began, and Rumsfeld and Cheney were trying to convince him to go back to Saudi Arabia and get the blessing for the United States to invade Iraq, and to take out Saddam Hussein, to use one of those phrases, take out. And Prince Bandar he was very reluctant. He thought that, the U.S. blew it in '91 with the Gulf War. They didn't take him down. They left him in power, and he, Bandar, and other Saudis were vulnerable to attack by Saddam, they thought, if he wasn't taken out. And anyway, a great detailed presentation was made with maps and statistics and little moving things around, and they on the map, and they said no foreigners are allowed to see this, but they showed it to him nevertheless. This is Rumsfeld and Cheney again. Anyway, Bandar wasn't buying any of it. So then at some point, Dick Cheney said in that dark, deep, ominous voice of his, he said, "Don't worry," he said, "if we do this, Saddam is toast." And at that point, Bandar said, okay, I will bring this back to my prince and see, get him to give the okay. Essentially, that's what happened. In an almost exact parallel, and this is the much more famous or infamous example, is when former CIA Director George Tenet was in the Oval Office with George Bush, Cheney, Rice, and Andrew Card, his former chief of staff. Tenet and his deputy at the CIA were making a presentation, and actually Tenet let the deputy handle all the detail work, the deputy went on and on, again with the statistics, the numbers, the briefings, the details that people like George Bush would, find kind of boring anyway. And at some point, Bush himself said, and the whole purpose of this was for the CIA to prove to Bush and Cheney that yes, they would find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and that Saddam was hiding them. And so after this long presentation was made by the deputy, George Bush said, so is that the best you got, George, to Tenet? Because they just thought, they said, is this something that Joe Public will understand? And at that point, George Tenet, who had been so quiet, jumped off the couch and sort of made a basketball gesture, and he said, don't worry, it's a slam dunk. And Bush said again, are you sure about that? And he said, it's a slam dunk case. And then, at that point, the mood in the room changed from discouragement to confidence. And Bush later told Woodward that if he had to go on the information that the deputy had told him, they wouldn't have believed that they could find the WMDs necessarily, but it was what George Tenet said when he said slam dunk, it put it over. Now what's so interesting about that is, aside from the power of the pop phrase, is that it wasn't, I don't think Bush and Cheney, I don't think they were convinced that there were WMDs in Iraq by saying slam dunk. What they were convinced of was that the public would be convinced by what they had to sell, and that would go over. In any case, slam dunk is the most forceful and consequential of any of these pop phrases.
Well, the phrase you use in the book, and this is what actually had me looking away besides these stories and just thinking about it, was you talked about when you use that phrase, you have the unspoken backing of phantom masses of people, because you've chosen something that everybody would say, a concept that just hits, John Q. Public, and it's just becomes very colloquial, and it's like, grandma's milk and cookies.
Right.
It's there with the force of all its history.
And it's more than grandma's milk and cookies. But a part of my definition of pop language is that you can hear a phantom crowd behind it, a crowd of millions. It's not just one person talking. When we talk with this language that's been through the media so much, we're talking with the voice of millions behind it. It has that force and even that vague sense of threat behind it, as slam dunk did. And one other thing that's so interesting about slam dunk is what I deal with in another part of the book, which is plosives. These are words that end in a hard K sound or P or T sound. Those are called plosives in linguistics.
And that certainly, that studying how various sounds affects people and how that gets back in the language is very much tied to advertising and media, who do fun studies like that. So, and we've only touched like a couple chapters in your book, plus your other book and all these other interesting things you've done. We're going to have to take a break in a minute, but then we'll get back, and I definitely want to get to this book as well, The Sponsored Life, which is about ads, TV, and American culture, which natural tie-in, but I have some more questions about slam dunks too. This is so much fun to be able to ask you about the things that I was stopping and staring in space and thinking about. Plus, I know you've been a commentator on NPR, right?
Somewhat,
and,
yeah.
Besides, as you mentioned, the Village Voice. So we'll get back to all of that very shortly. We're going to take a little break, and again, thank you for coming. This is fascinating.
Sure.
Can I help you, sir?
I found these over by the stairs.
Okay, thank you.
What are they?
Love handles. Lots of people lose them taking the stairs instead of the escalator.
If you're not helping after-school programs, you're really helping to take them away. After-school programs, wouldn't you rather be helping?
Okay, we're back, and it's a pleasure to be here still, and we get to keep going with all these interesting things. Right before our break, we were talking about plosives, so that's just a great word in itself.
I love it, yeah.
And you didn't coin that, did you?
Oh, no,
yeah,
that's a linguistic term that I learned
Oh,
about.
okay.
And what it is that there's certain sounds. It's K sound, like or dunk, like in slam dunk. P's, it's the N sound usually. Pop, and hard T sounds, usually at the end of word, but they're sometimes at the beginnings. But they are sounds that actually you have to make a little explosion in your mouth as you do it. And it's so interesting. I think human beings love to do it, and this crosses different languages as well. It is a fun thing to do, and because it takes a little bit of force to say it, it emits a little force, a little, there's a sort of cognitive force in the words as well. For instance, so many of the dirty words end in a plosive, a hard K or P sound, and you can figure those out yourself. But also the sounds of, a lot of the words that are synonyms for hit, or slap, or knock down, they also end in plosives. It's forceful. And years ago, when I was working at The Voice and writing about advertising, I did a piece about sneaker advertising and sneakers in general, and how they built such a cult out of really nothing, or almost nothing. But I noticed that so many of the sneaker brands ended in plosives as well, because they're all about force and power. And so that's just to get back to the idea that when George Tennant said, "Don't worry, it's a slam dunk," finding these WMDs, it wasn't just powerful because it's a fun word. It had that force in it. It alluded back to basketball, which is something Joe Q. Public would get into, and who knows, maybe even Bush. I don't know about his sports preferences there. But in any case, there's something in such a short, succinct word like that helped get over the idea that, yeah, we'll find the WMDs, don't worry. Saddam is toast is another plosive. I mean, they just have a little one-up on getting an idea across.
Well, that's interesting. I did, back when I did graphic design and was studying it, and one of our assignments was designing a sneaker. I'm thinking my sneaker never would have made it because it was called Gazelle, and I went for it was great packaging and a beautiful sneaker design, but you know, the name never would have caught on because I didn't have the right sounds in there.
Well, there's exceptions to everything, though.
That's all right. It wasn't really important, but that leads me into another thing that I thought was really interesting. You go into a lot of depth talking about Black English and how that's affected pop language, and actually a lot of the using letters, not for the sound of the letters so much, but using letters as a code, including you trace the phrase 24/7 to Black English, which, and I think, as I remember, you expressed your surprise, because I was like, oh, I would have thought that was definitely a tech sort of spin-off.
Yeah, and I thought it was for convenience stores or something.
That's another good one. Of course, I use that for the library because it's a perfect phrase. It's a phrase that fits a need.
Right. Well, Black English has had more effect than any other source on what is now popular language and, by extension, pop language. And because so much of Black English, starting with slavery and on through the jazz era and so forth, so much of Black English was developed as sort of a code, especially during slavery, so that the master wouldn't know what people were really saying or thinking or feeling. So they had to find a way to appear to be proper in doing what they were supposed to do, but had a much more subversiveness within. They were able to communicate with each other more subversively with words that that were coded so the white people wouldn't understand what they were saying. And that sense of a code we still have that. So much of slang is based on various codes and secret or mutual understandings that are not open to the wider public. And everybody wants to be in on the code. Everybody wants to be in there. That's the cool place to be. That's the inside place. And so what's happened so interestingly, I think, is that Black English is now so popular, mostly through hip-hop at this point, that the language of an excluded people is now imitated by non-excluded people in order to sound more included, to sound more inside. You have to sound like an outsider to sound more inside now. And so it's not just with phrases that come from the Black community like 24/7 or my bad or dozens of others. Cool being the preeminent pop word of all time, for instance. It's not just the individual words themselves, it's the whole attitude toward language and subverting it to communicate with presumably like-minded people. Putting Z's on the end of words, which everybody does now, but that started as a Black thing, and the X in other words also started as sort of a Black thing. And the whole attitude of so much let me back up a minute. Black language is sort of the official, unofficial speech of America. And it represents the same way that we like to talk, use hip-hop phrases here and there. It's the same way that so much of American culture now, mainstream culture, has sort of a crush on anything alternative. You know, if it's alternative, it's cooler, whether it's non-mainstream media or non-MSM. You know, the blog world is sort of another form of alternative, like alternative rock was, or, you know, anyway, we like things that seem outside to make us feel more inside.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely talk about that as always having been a component of pop language, too, is the, whether it's showing a freedom from authority or, you know, but how quickly now it gets so large that the true people who are being the true outsiders or radicals or whatever are moving on to something else, but they can't keep ahead of the media anymore.
Right.
Sort of seems
and that's
like.
when the language becomes pop. It becomes popular. And like pop music. Pop music is anything but fringe or alternative. It's very, you know, mainstream at a certain level, and so we well, actually, I forgot what you were saying something that made me think of something, and now I forgot what it was.
But I want to ask you, so let me do it while I'm thinking of it, is you have the What's Up story here, and talk about, you know, getting taken over by the media. Tell us that one.
Well, What's Up, you know, the long, exaggerated What's Up was, sort of came about by some independent filmmakers, Black filmmakers, I believe in Chicago, but I could be wrong about that. And they would say it among themselves, and they made an independent film, and some people from Budweiser happened to see this independent film, and they said, hey, that would be great for our commercials, and they put it in the ads. They got the original guys to appear in the ads, in fact. And you know, the rest is sort of short pop history there. It became wildly explosive and popular, and so much so that people who might have said "What's up?" is sort of just a regular cool greeting no longer wanted to say it. It had been so bought by the media, and that's the thing. When the media and marketing gets a hold of this, the language of regular people or of slang or something, and they make it. A word or phrases sort of go through that media and marketing mill, and they come out with, I say, you know, sort of a shiny new coat. They come out with a new glamour and a new power because they've been on the media. And that's why I said when we hear certain words like "What's up?" or "My bad," we hear a crowd of millions of people saying it too, because we somewhere in our brains know that millions of other people have seen this on TV show or movies or blogs or reality shows or talk shows, whatever. We're imbibing the media as we speak, and our language comes out with that media gloss to it as we communicate with each other in real life. And that is the source of these words' power, is that other people have said them, and we know, and then you're going to in other words, something happens, it's sort of, you sense the power structure of the moment in a conversation with whoever is able to say these words with the most naturally and with the best inflection. He wins a little bit of that moment.
Well, and you've got that very commercial, highly polished gloss. But the part about that story that really struck me was their friends, the independent filmmakers' friends, suggested that they copyright the phrase, and they're like, it's what's up, that's just what we do, it's just our little funny thing or whatever. And then Budweiser ended up copywriting it, correct? Or someone did.
No, you know what it was? You know what it was? I mean, what's up was in black language for decades before these guys, the independent filmmakers, did the extenuated ones. What happened with trademark, they never tried to trademark that phrase. It was an ad agency that tried to trademark something else involved in that.
Okay.
And it wasn't.
I got it mixed up. Okay.
And I don't have exactly the details.
I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. That of course the commercial aspect would be trying to lock it down and say, no, this isn't pop, this is our phrase. But if you could believe, we're almost out of time, and this has just flown, and I still have all my markers, and we didn't even get to the markers in your book. So if you had one more thing you wanted to tell us, what would it be?
Oh. Well,
there's just too much I can still think. I mean, the Sponsored Life. Tell us one sentence about this book, and we're done.
The Sponsored Life is a collection of a lot of my columns from the Village Voice about advertising and TV and American culture. It doesn't have my most recent. Columns were written a long time ago, though.
Okay, well, that's good. People have a lot to dip into. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Sure.
We'll have to do it again.
Thank you. This was fun. Thank you.
This was great. And I'm not sure if we own this one at the library, so I have to make sure.
When skies are cloudy and gray, they're only gray for a day. So wrap your troubles in dreams and dream your troubles away until that sunshine peeps through. There's only one thing to do. Just wrap your troubles in dreams and dream your troubles away. Your castles may tumble, that's fate after all. Life's funny that way. No use to grumble, smile as they fall. Want you king for a day. Just remember that sunshine always follows the rain. So wrap your troubles in dreams and dream your troubles away.